just when you were saying that, I was picturing like you're a test subject in a lab, and
Ugh.
then you're just sleeping, and then just these scientists come into the room,
Yeah.
and then they just have a radio on, and then they're just like, "Yes, Johnson is gonna listen to 20 no." How long does Johnson sleep? Maybe 6 hours. Six
Oh.
hours of Swedish, and he's gonna be a native speaker in 1 week.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Polyglot Perspective podcast, hosted by me, Taylor.
And me, Lily. In this episode of Polyglot Perspective Rants, we will be talking about, is it possible to learn languages in your sleep?
But before we get started, we would really appreciate it if you could take a few seconds to subscribe to the podcast and our YouTube channel, as well as leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. This would truly help us out a lot. Another reminder is that all of these podcast episodes will be available on our website at polyglotperspective.com, so please feel free to check it out. Thanks so much. To get started, this topic, as you know, learning languages in your sleep, was proposed by Lily, and to be completely honest, I don't really know too much about it. I think the only exposure I've had to the idea of learning languages in your sleep or learning anything in your sleep was probably the YouTube subliminal videos that I've seen where they're I don't know, like 2-3 hours long, and then people listen to that in their sleep, and then somehow I think they're supposed to retain the language or retain some sort of course material, but I don't really know how that works. So, Lily, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, this topic, I remember when I was first learning my second language, Chinese, for the first time, I just stumbled upon all these videos about learning languages in your sleep. If you look it up on YouTube, there's like, oh my God, there's so many results, and some vary in length, like 8 hours. And there's even ones that are like 3 or 6 hours. I'm like, 3 hours? How are you going to sleep to that? But they have it. I've personally listened to those videos, and basically, those videos have the foreign language said twice and then the translation into the native language, and it keeps going on. But if you actually take the chance to listen to the vocabulary, you realize they're repeating one list for like a couple hours. I noticed because like I used to do dishes and then I would listen to the vocabulary and then it just repeats and repeats. But you're probably wondering, is this really possible to learn in your sleep? So there's a lot of different studies and people that say that it's actually possible, but I think it's really ridiculous because language is actually very complex. There's a lot of different phonology that goes into it, so sometimes there's not the same vowels or same consonants or same sound quality in different languages. Also, there's a lot of languages with different complex syntax, so different grammar. So just learning that in your sleep seems very far-fetched. What do you think, Taylor?
That's so interesting because you mentioned that it was what the target language repeated a couple times and then translated.
Hmm.
I feel like if it's just pure sentences, like if they put a full, really long sentence and then they repeat that over and over, you might not retain that because that is very complex and it has a lot of grammar. But if they repeat, let's say, like apple 50 times and then they translate it, I feel like maybe you'll pick that up. I don't know. I feel like it depends on the content of the video. And you said they used to repeat like the same vocab list for hours. So maybe if they
Hmm.
did like a rotational vocab list, like 10 words for 1 hour straight, maybe you'll pick that up. I don't really know how that works. I've never listened to one of those videos, so maybe. Seems interesting.
I don't know, but if you're like a light sleeper or a deep sleeper, I think this probably could be very harmful.
Yeah.
It could affect your sleep quality. For example, if you're a light sleeper, I don't know if you can listen to French for 5 hours and think, ah, yes, I'm going to go fall asleep. Or people with insomnia, maybe they would actually learn because they can't sleep. But if you want to have good sleep, then how are you going to just play this like murmuring in the background while you're just trying to doze off?
That is true. Is there a rule that you have to play it while, like, when you're going to bed? Or can you do a thing where you sleep already and then someone comes into your room in the middle of the night and then just plays some audio and then you miraculously start picking it up?
Th That's funny, like, just when you were saying that, I was picturing, like, you're a test subject in a lab, and
Ugh.
then you're just sleeping, and then just these scientists come into the room,
Yeah.
and then they just have a radio on, and then they're just like, "Yes, Johnson is gonna listen to 20" no, how long does Johnson sleep? Maybe 6 hours. 6
Oh,
hours of Swedish, and he's gonna be a native speaker in 1 week.
exactly, and they're just, like, peering at you from, like, the outside glass, and then you're sleeping.
No, imagine they're just, like, over your sleeping body, and then they're just noting he's just like, "Yes, he's murmuring apple in his sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
It's working, it's working." But most likely, I don't think really sleeping in learning language in your sleep would help because it's too passive, and a lot of the good language learning takes effect when it's active. And when people say that sleep helps language learning, I think they mean it in a different way. There are studies, such as one conducted by a German psychologist in 1914, which said that sleep helps aid and boost memory and learning. So, getting a good sleep at night or having a power nap before learning some vocabulary can help. Or just studying a list of vocabulary before you go to sleep can also help you remember it.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. I've heard that with school subjects. People told me, "Don't stay up super late to study math, just study math, like, what, like 10 PM, and then get 8 hours of sleep, and then in the morning, you'll remember it better than if you just stayed up super late." And also going back to what you said about input and output and stuff like that, but couldn't you argue that for input, you have things like comprehensible input for the first like 6 or so months of someone's language learning journey that usually helps them out, and that usually comprehensible input is supposed to help you really get the foundation of a language before you start speaking it. So could this sleep learning idea act as that comprehensible input in a way? I don't know how comprehensible it would be, but
Mhm. So I feel like they are very two different examples, comprehensible input and just learning in your sleep. With comprehensible input, you're actually awake. You're
true.
using a little bit of
Very
your
true.
brain. You're noticing these patterns. And with comprehensible input, they hear the words multiple times, but they have their conscience awake. But if somebody is asleep, maybe they're snoring, they're a deep sleeper, they can sleep through like a tor like tormenta, like a storm, and like the cats, they're flying in the street, and then it's like meow, and then the dogs, they're just running, and then this person is still
Wow.
sleeping. You think they remembered the cats and the dogs flying across the street? No. So how are they gonna remember words? And I feel like what you said before about having the videos like with sentences, that makes it even harder because maybe the structure is very different. Maybe it's a SOV, a subject object verb language. Maybe
Mhm.
the really rare language is the object subject verb. So, how are they supposed to know? Maybe they would just remember it, but how do they know how the language works? And I still just me personally and a lot of people on YouTube and studies, they don't really think that language learning in your sleep is actually possible.
I see. Not to play devil's advocate, but what if, right? Because I think a lot of this is saying, what if you don't know the structure of the language? But what if
What if
you
you
have been,
do?
yeah, what if you do? What if you've been studying, like, let's say I've been studying Spanish for so many years at this point, and I know pretty much like the foundation of the language. So what if I were to listen to some Spanish sentences and I'm familiar with vocab, familiar with some sentence structure? Do you think that would be beneficial to listen to that? I don't really know. Like, because you said you tried this out before, right?
Yes, I actually did try this out.
Yeah.
I think I tried this out before, like, one of those, like, 5-hour videos. I played it, and then I woke up, and I was kinda cranky after it, and then I didn't remember anything that went on. So, it just didn't work for me, and I've seen a lot of different people on YouTube, and it didn't work for them.
Mm.
Maybe you can play devil's advocate like
Yeah.
Taylor and go listen to German vocabulary, German sentences, and one day you'll wake up fluent.
Maybe I will try it out.
Maybe you can try that. But a lot of research shows that sleep does aid memory, but it doesn't prove that learning in your sleep that you're getting it to your self-conscious. There's a lot of different ways you can passively learn, which will be more effective than sleep learning.
Okay. Maybe to close off, I feel like the consensus is probably don't learn a language in your sleep. I mean, you could totally do that. I think it's not really going to harm you in any way unless you do have a hard time sleeping with lots of sounds in the background. But if you don't, then why not? Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe it won't. Even if you listen to
That's what Taylor says.
yeah, that's what I say. If you listen to 8 hours of audio and you only pick up the word apple, better than nothing. So I would say if you want to do it, go for it. If you don't want to do it, that's totally fine too. You can do whatever you want.
Yes, you are in control of you, but I would say you can use your time better.
True. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And we will be back with another episode next week. Bye.